Well, now, if I was a working man, I'd be sighing, having completed my labours of the week. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm a retired man. So it's not the same thrill, but on the other hand, it's not as hard of working during the week. What would you say,
Yeah,
Pat? Would you swap? Would you like to be
absolutely.
working?
I've always said my favorite day of the week was Monday. Oh, well, a favorite morning is Monday morning. Remember for years, Monday morning, you just faced it in another week. Now, Jude, see when 8 o'clock comes around and I sort of half open one eye, I simply turn around and close it again and go back to sleep. Yeah,
You're a very positive man, Pat. I find myself
yeah.
a sort of a little tug of nostalgia for the days. There was a very good feeling 4 o'clock or even 3 o'clock on a Friday.
Oh,
It
yeah, that was
really
nice.
was.
Ah, yeah,
Your
yeah.
system sort of just loosened up, and you knew they couldn't get at you really for another 3 days. And
I,
which pub will we go to today?
God bless
Okay,
us all. Right.
let's get down to business here. And you, with your eagle eye as a former editor, have spotted a couple of stories which are just breaking. Let's
Yeah,
start with the tedious one, and that's Starmer. Starmer managed
yes,
to get two of these, were by-elections, weren't they?
yeah,
And they had quite thumping wins in them.
yeah.
Do you attribute much to that? I mean, wasn't it sort of expected, really?
Yeah, Jude, you know something? I think Starmer's biggest asset is the fact that he's not a Tory. I don't think he's well up to offer himself.
Not
I
officially, anyway.
genuinely believe that. Yeah, like somebody referred to him on the BBC today as Captain Flip Flop. But Jude, I don't buy it. There's something about Starmer I genuinely don't like, and I'm deadly serious about that. Anyone who can come on an interview and said it was all right, and like no matter whether you're Russian, Chinese, or anything. But he was referring to Gaza. He said it was all right for this. When asked directly, was it okay for the Israelis to turn off the water, the food supply, and medicines to the people in Gaza? He refused to condemn it. He actually sort of said, after the attack on them, it was legitimate. I was going, good merciful Jesus, is this where we're at now? And he has consistently, and I mean consistently, refused to call for a ceasefire. And he says the party has to put power before protest. Jude, if you're putting power before principle, I think that's an entirely different matter.
Well, that's what he's doing. I mean, he has his model is Tony Blair, and Tony Blair
Hmm.
sort of changed completely the tone of, although mind you, I think Kinnock would have been similar, changed the tone of the Labour Party. It was more of I suppose, the equivalent of alliance here. It wasn't the working man's party anymore. But do you not think maybe that's what you have to do? You've got to drift towards the centre at least if you're going to get into power in England. And is that not
Yeah,
worthwhile?
and in fairness, the Brits are definitely a conservative society with a small c, and sometimes they vote for people with a capital C. But Jesus, Jude, it seems to be that you know. But you sort of go worry right across the board. Jude. Uh, I think a lot of people in Britain are now totally. The turnout in some of those were Jude was very very low.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think what's the what is it? Wellingsborough, they overturned an 18,000 majority, Tory majority, by
Hmm.
6,000. But I think it was your man Lord Frost said, it's not that the Labour vote is going up all that much, is that our vote is collapsing. And Jude,
Yeah.
everywhere you look at, Tories are universally unpopular. And Jude, see when you hear, which I heard twice today, because I was driving down from Sligo today, or
Hmm.
sorry, my wife was driving, I was sitting on the passenger seat. But anyway, I was sitting listening to the news, and basically they're sort of saying that they're big, the Tories, they're big, what would you say, uh, what they're going to do is bring back Boris Johnson. It was mentioned to her thing. This is their new secret weapon. They're going to get back into power by bringing back Jesus, Jude. If they bring Boris Johnson, is that what they think now as a vote winner that's going to keep them in government?
Well, I understand the point because Boris was a fantastic vote winner, but I don't think that he's going to be brought back. It'd be too shameless. I think there are a lot of reaction against it. I gathered, incidentally, I was looking at an article in The Guardian, and both Starmer and Sunak are going to have a sort of a PR exercise over the next month or so where their image will be cultivated. Starmer, Starmer, for example, is going to appear on, is it British Vogue? And it showed you a few of the shots of him and his wife. You know, a beautiful autumn day or a, spring day.
Bollocks,
Lovely piece of camera work. And it's that idea of helping you to love the man. And then you can sort of swallow the policies after that. But I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of that.
Here's a man. Here, Dr. Conza, run this by. Here's a man who's said to be the leader of the Labour Party. First of all, he serves on Jeremy Corbyn's cabinet or whatever, front bench, and then when he becomes leader, stabs
Corbyn.
Right, that's the first thing. He promised all sorts of things for the Green movement, 28 billion for the Green. Has totally dropped that policy now. He has told his people not to go out and support striking nurses and doctors, etc., etc. What else has he done? As regards Israel, he has basically shown himself to lack humanity. He has refused to call for a ceasefire. Now, Jude, which one of those, or the combination of them, would you say makes him out to be a great leader?
I think he's just a man who's looking for power, and he sees the dangers all the time, so he tries to block off the danger points rather than create some sort of vision or possibility for the future. What did you think of the job he did with the Rochdale and what was the other place where the guys were caught saying stuff about Israel? One of them, Rochdale, I think it was, the guy said that it could have been a setup.
The Israelis knew about it, and he I read in one of the papers. One of the guys says it's not a conspiracy theory. That there's a lot of people asking questions. By the way, remember a couple of months back, you said, why did it take the Israelis so long? Remember, you said you had read somewhere that it had taken Israel so long to respond. The other thing is apparently the day before, the Americans had warned them that there was something happening as well. So there's is that a conspiracy theory, or is that a sort of wait a minute, did something go on there? Was there something that happened that now to suggest they allowed a massacre to go on? But the question is, what did happen there? Is that not a legitimate question to ask? Was there something going on that we don't know about?
Yeah, I think that's a key point. Even there wasn't something going on that we haven't heard about. Even it was the way it has been presented. Do politicians and members of a party not have the right to say, I think this could have happened? I mean, is that then if you label that, who labels the thing conspiracy theories or not a conspiracy theory?
Or here's the whole thing. What do you call it? This guy had talked about Russia, China, the United States. Nothing would have happened, but because he mentioned it about Israel, he's been taken off the ticket, and now apparently they can't sort of lasso him off the ticket because it's past the sell-by date, and he's the candidate, but he will not be the official representative. Now, if he romps home with a thumping great majority, I think Starmer's getting the message. Judy, I think there's a lot of he's losing a lot of. He's lost the Islamic vote or the Muslim vote in Britain without question. I think he's going to lose a lot of the left of the Labour Party as well. But maybe, as you say, the centre ground in England is around pretty much on the right wing. Yeah. And maybe he'll have a stomping great majority, but of people who just don't give a shit. They just don't care. He does nothing for them, but he's not a Tory.
That's right. I think that's what will decide things eventually. You do know, of course, that George Galloway is tipped to take that seat in the by-election in Rochdale. Well, how do you feel about that?
I would definitely vote for George Galloway, because I would vote for somebody who absolutely would shake things up. Dude, this sort of cozy consensus about what's going on in the world, that the Israelis are allowed to murder, and you're a loony lefty if you sort of say calling for a ceasefire is something. Dude, when I was growing up, decency and fairness and honesty were considered middle of the road. Now it seems to be you're a loser and you're a left-wing loony if you think, no, wait a minute, killing people's not good. Fairness is a good idea. Principle is a good idea. I find that unbelievable.
I wish I could say that you're showing your age saying that when I was a young fella. But in fact, I think you're right. I think you're right. That's a tragedy of the damn thing. Um, I've got a sneaking regard for Galloway. I think he's. There was a clip. Do you remember a clip of him facing down a set of American generals or something,
Absolutely,
and he
absolutely.
shredded them?
He went over to, and he absolutely about the whole Israel Palestinian thing,
Yeah.
and they were going to chastise him. They
Mhm.
invited him over to give him a dressing down, and about and there was basically he was meeting the Israeli lobby. He absolutely wiped the floor. They were standing with their mouths open. They did, and not by the way. You notice the fact, Jude, if you ever play it, not one of them tried to interrupt them or come back on because they knew they were going to get slaughtered because their position was unsustainable.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
basically called them out in every lie, every cheat, every sort of thing. The American policy in regard to Israel is not sustainable in principle under any circumstance.
Well, you see, that's the thing. If they got Galloway in there, one thing you could rest easy on is that he would be supportive of the Palestinians and Muslims
Yeah,
generally. And they've been on this crap about, oh, if I say this, I'll be anti-Semite and I'll be thrown out of the party. I mean,
yeah.
is he the Reform Party he's with? Surely
I
that's
don't know
not the.
where he's going now.
I think it's
Yeah.
Reform Party is, but surely that's not. Tell me that's not the same party that Nigel Farage is in.
Well, they think they're going to invite Nigel. Are you sure?
I think
By
it's
the
the
way,
Reform
George is a very
Party.
strange guy. They're fun. George was against Scottish independence, which I
That's
find
right.
unbelievable.
Oh, he was
No,
against it because he believed it would introduce sectarianism. And you see, there might be something in that. I'd give him he's entitled to his opinion. I disagree
yeah,
violently with him, and I'm very sorry that he has that view. But I
yeah,
could see, that there is the seeds of sectarianism in Scotland, as there's more than just the seeds here in the north. So he
yeah,
had a point in a way. But anyway,
yeah.
so that was Mr. Starmer or Sir Keith.
So anyway, Jude, are you? Here's a question for you. Do you, on the basis of the two by-elections last night, are you saying now, or do you feel that Starmer is as if it continues, he is bolted on to be the next
Aye,
British Prime
aye,
Minister?
he's home and hosed, and he was home and hosed before those two by-elections. I think he might have some tricky moments with this one in Rochdale because there's two coming up.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't think he's bound to win. Of course, he's bound to win. The Tories are just, yeah, they're in the cellar, and there's a hole in the cellar.
Wasn't he lucky yesterday that just on the day of the by-election, it was announced that Britain is actually in technical recession?
Oh, geez,
Jesus,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That's amazing. And you see, your man Rishi Sunak is being sold as Mr. Efficiency, Mr. Well, he got
yeah.
several pledges.
He
One of
was going
which
to turn
was
things
he did
around. Yeah,
reintroduce
yeah,
the economy would then be buoyant, or on the way up.
yeah,
And in fact, it's on the
yeah.
way down still.
This is the financial genius, the financial
But
guru. This is the guy, But hey,
all these things,
one thing you have to give
yeah,
Sunak is that he seems reasonable. He seems competent compared to Liz Truss and compared
uh,
to Boris Johnson. Jesus
yeah.
Christ, he does seem, half human. You
And at
know,
least he's not a hypocritical, which is what I see
yeah,
Starmer. Every time I see Starmer, I think he's a bloody hypocrite, and he keeps on nobbling his own men, his own party.
yeah.
He has destroyed the political career of more people in the Labour Party
His
than
own
he
party
has in
than
the
he did.
Tory Party.
Exactly, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, let's move on to another one, which is a very somber one. And I noticed that William Crawley on Talkback today gave this as a big sort of headline story. And that was that the man who went back to Russia, Alexei Navalny, was sent to a labor camp, I think, in Siberia or somewhere, and has been found
Yeah,
dead. And
yeah.
the assumption is that he was killed. What's your feelings on that, Pat? You think there's a new emperor of Russia? I think you said.
Without question, I have a friend who's a very intelligent guy and he's very good in politics and all the rest. And he says, and he has a go at this thing about the Americans, about Israel and all the rest of it. And he suggests to me that that maybe that Putin is, why should we disbelieve Putin when he says about a lot of things about happening about NATO circling around Russia and all the rest of it.
Mm.
And I agree with a lot of things that he said. Putin has a case in regard to Ukraine and so on. But
Mhm.
what always stops me going any further in support of Putin is this thing. Every one of his opponents disappears. They
Mm.
either die, they are nobbled, they emigrate, whatever the expression. Like Navalny, Jude, I think it was 2007. You can check us out. he apparently he's a very smart guy. He bought shares on I know some of these big oil companies and energy companies in Russia,
Yeah.
and started to go through them to find evidence of corruption and fraud. And apparently, within days, he had found everything he wanted to find out. And it was the charm circle, the usual cronies that surround
Yeah.
Putin. And he started going public with it. And then suddenly he was getting harassed by the police. He was all the rest. And anyway, bottom line, should you know what happened? He was poisoned a couple of years ago. Uh, um, and a Novichok, which, by the way, is a military grade poison, so you don't buy it over the counter in a pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
So it was state sponsored poisoning. And anyway, he was taken to Germany and he got treated there. He came back very, very bravely. He came back to keep fighting, and he was arrested. And then he got 19 years on a trumped up charge of extremism. Jesus, extremism!
Mm-hmm.
And they were sent to a prison in the Arctic Circle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since then, apparently he's been sort of they play music. I think it's 6 o'clock in the morning to deliberately sort of disorientate him. He was in solitary confinement. He's been in, I think, since 2021. He's been in solitary confinement something like 26 times. 26 times as 2 weeks at a time. So, Jude, you can imagine all that, and he's dead at 47. If you don't blame Putin for that, you don't blame him for anything.
Oh, I have no doubt Putin is a dictator, and I'd say Putin is
Yeah.
directly responsible for your man's death. I have a couple of questions,
Yeah.
though. One is, why did he go back to Russia? I remember the shots of him
Yeah.
on the plane, maybe, or
Yeah.
before that, and he was smiling and waving
Yeah.
goodbye to his wife and so on. Why did he do that? I mean, he must have
Apparently,
known what was going to happen.
he thought he could be a change thing, and I think he had some
That was
sort of,
very naive.
what would you
I
call
mean,
it, a delusional thing that you can change. Putin has it sewn up to it.
oh, yes.
You're not allowed to protest in the street anymore.
Hmm.
Yeah, if you take the streets, you're gone. If you politically, you're gone. Most of the people who are that were his opponents are now, are in exile. Uh, two or three of them are dead. So
Well,
what
but
do
you
you know?
see, Pat, the thing you were saying, he went and he bought shares in these oil companies or whatever that went private after the USSR collapsed.
Yeah,
And then he, as you say, found corruption. But I mean, he didn't need to do that. He knew,
yeah,
we all know there was corruption in these huge oligarchs that emerged from the
yeah,
wreckage of the USSR. So why would he
yeah.
do that? It doesn't sort of make sense, or else he was very naive that he had to go and get his hands in these companies and find out examples of corruption. She knew perfectly well. Well, you know, the guy that owned Chelsea.
Sorry,
That
did
guy
people
didn't
like
become
Patrick?
as rich as he. The
I
guy
but hold on.
who
Why
was
did
charged.
people like Patrick Pierce go out
Yeah.
in 1916, knowing almost certainly that it was a defeat? Why did the hunger strikers go on strike? They knew there was a fair chance that they would die.
No, no,
People sometimes do things for would you say, benign reasons because they think they're doing the right thing.
well, I just thought that, I take a point about his courage in going back to Russia. I mean, signing his own death sentence, but then that's what Pierce or
Yeah,
somebody said. No, Collins, wasn't it?
yeah,
But at the same time, I do think that to mount an investigation as to whether there was corruption or not in terms of the big oil companies, I think I was nuts. I mean, that guy who owned
yeah.
Chelsea, he was a perfect example.
Abramovich. There's all sort
Hugely
of like
wealthy.
where would anybody seriously ask where Abramovich got about? I think he had 7 billion. He came from nowhere and suddenly had 7 billion. Go and tell me any if he wants to sort of check it out. Then there's other guys, as a Gazprom, two or three. But the real claim is that what do you call him? What do you call Putin? Putin allegedly. I can't remember the papers that all that were found some years back, the Bahama papers, or what the hell they call them, they were one of them sort of islands where there's no tax laws,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
discovered, what do you call them? Putin's former wife owned a bank. Now, come on, Jesus Christ, where
Well,
does all that
listen,
come?
you mentioned there's no public you can't demonstrate in the street in Russia. I don't know that that makes a hell of a difference. I'll tell you something now. I can only think of about 2 occasions when I marched in Ireland, one in Dublin and one in the north. And
Yeah,
both of those were against the British government. No, yeah, but against the British government. But I mean, I didn't think it was going to achieve very much, and I don't think it did achieve very much. So actually, as a human right, you would say it's a human right, but it's not a big deal. We could live
Yeah.
without that. The second thing I would say is, remember, certainly Putin had their man killed. I'd be just about 100% sure that was the case. But we do have the
Mm.
death penalty in the US. You saw that guy
Yeah.
who was they tried to execute him, and he was on that bloody thing for about 20 minutes or something, and then they finally worked out a way of killing him, and he was another 20 minutes before he died. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying he was a political prisoner, but
Yeah.
the same kind of inhumanity and cold-bloodedness exists
Yeah.
in the US
I
in a
know. I
different
take your point,
context.
but Jude, there is a difference, and you pointed it out yourself just there. Like in America, uh, Joe Biden wouldn't be able to have Donald Trump executed. Well, not as far as we know, anyway. Uh, and the other thing, there was a guy on the ballot there. A couple of next the presidential elections in Russia are next month.
Yeah.
There was a guy who was against the war in Ukraine. He was put off the ballot there but 2 months ago on some pretext or context or whatever, absolute
Mm.
corruption.
Yeah.
It was fraud again. So
Yeah.
next month's election, basically, what do you call him? Putin is going to be reappointed president because there's nobody else on the ballot.
Uh,
So if you want to ask yourself, like he did a 2.5 hour interview with what do you call
uh,
the guy, the
uh,
American
yeah. Yeah.
Tucker Carlson,
Yeah.
and it is the most boring. I was going to
Mm.
use a swear word there you'll ever come across. It went on and on.
Not
And
like that.
Tucker, I don't know how Tucker got himself a big reputation because I could bore for Russia listening to, and he didn't interrupt him with a question and so on. But anyway, the bottom line is, Jude, I don't think you can believe a word Putin says. I think he's a liar. I think he's a psychopath, and he's
Yeah.
definitely a killer.
Well, a lot of people in Russia, I think, are grateful to him because he ended the lawlessness that was the sort of common denominator everywhere in the USSR after it collapsed, and that's why they're fond of him. They know he's clamping down on human rights, but they say he's given us peace and to get some sort of stability in the party. And incidentally, we're talking about, you said that Putin wouldn't allow somebody onto the ballot. I mean, sure, look at what happened to Jerry McCormick. Look at what happened to the two guys, Rochdale, was it, or on the other place? They said the wrong thing. Boom, you're off the list. We won't have you. We don't like to say things like that. And everybody accepts it. You see, all I'm saying is, I'm not saying we're as bad as Russia, but in the UK, let's not kid ourselves. Or America. Remember Bill Clinton? Remember Bill Clinton was running for president for the first time, and it involved a prisoner whom he would not extend mercy to. And in fact, he made sure that the guy was executed before the election. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So
the guy was actually mentally retarded.
That's
He was
right.
eating a sandwich, and
That's
he says,
correct.
when the guards come in for him, he says, "I'll come back for that later." Why would you execute somebody like that?
But I say this: the cold-bloodedness and ruthlessness isn't simply confined to Russia. I wouldn't for a moment deny that it exists in Russia, but it's not, exclusive.
I agree with you. But hey, that's the degree to which it exists, and by God, Russia is way ahead.
Okay. We're getting a bit short in time here. We've got 10 minutes left. So,
right.
What about this thing? The Tory press, Daily Mail, and so on, apparently are having an aneurysm nearly at what they're seeing. The mayor of London has named these new lines that they have, overground rail around London, and one of them is the Suffragette line, and another one is the Windrush line. Here in Belfast, we changed Belfast Central station to Lanyon Place. What do you think of this idea of calling them by different names?
I think
sort of reflecting political views.
What do you call the guy? Can the mayor of London?
Sadiq Khan. Yeah.
What? What's his first name? Sadiq Khan. Sadiq. I couldn't remember his first name there. The bottom line, I think he's doing this deliberately to piss off the Daily Mail and all those sorts of guys. Hey, Jude, how do you really, the whole right wing, call it the Windrush, named after the Jamaican immigrants who came in about 1948, and then he gets the feminist vote by what's the other one? What do they call the other one?
A suffragette, suffragette line.
Suffragette. So he gets and he's basically given two fingers to the old colonels and the old guys who are choking over their gins and tonics and down at the club. What's this country coming to? All these foreigners, and he's taking a piss. And and by the way, I think Jude, they call I think Daily Mail or the Telegraph, it doesn't matter, called it a vanity project because some of the renaming cost someone like $6 million. Jude, what did the Tories have spent something like I don't know, Jude, couple of $100 million on that north, that railway
yes,
for the north,
HS2 or whatever.
A couple of hundred, maybe even $1 billion. And even I know how far has it gone? It hasn't even got through it. So I don't think they're on a well solid ground having to go with Sadiq Khan.
Well, what do you feel about it in general, Pat? Like, I'm just thinking, what I used to know as Main Street Station in Dublin is now Connolly Station since the 60s. Yeah. Houston Station used to be something else. Yeah. So a number of those have been called after the men from 1916. So would you think that's a good idea to?
I'm not sure. I really am not sure. Like, these things can be used to sort of jab somebody else, and there's no doubt about that. Wasn't O'Connell Street in Dublin, did not have a different name?
Oh, it did. Sackville Street, yeah.
Sackville Street, and so on. Jude, but then the other story, Jude, you can argue, I haven't thought about it a lot, Jude, but like the people from the Windrush generation deserve a bit of recognition. They were treated very badly, and they've made a significant contribution to the British society. And Jude, if you ever on a Sunday night, if you ever watch Call the Midwife, and it's on at the minute, you will notice they are actually bringing more and more black people into the nurses, because it's reflective of what they got. The Brits got a lot of their hospital staff from the Windrush generation. By the way, the Call the Midwife set in the 1960s.
Yeah, but are you suggesting they shouldn't, honor people? You were saying that,
I think they should.
Made a great contribution.
The only proviso is, Jude, Jude, hang on, go and explain to me. Have you got and Derry? You go Balmoral Avenue and all that sort of stuff. People living there are Irish Catholics. They're not bloody well from a little hamlet in England. Those names were deliberately sort of, to anglify the place. There's a whole lot of other names you can think them up yourself.
I'll tell you.
As long as it's not done deliberately. But I haven't said that, Jude. I'm all in favour of calling them place as long as it's legitimate. And Windrush is totally legitimate.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think names are very powerful, and the British always do this very quickly. If you look at Belfast, Royal Avenue, King's Hall,
Windsor Avenue,
Windsor Avenue, Windsor Park, all over the place.
Victoria,
and that is a deliberate policy, and that's you mightn't like it, but that's the influence that those kind of names have. And I likewise, I think Connolly, Houston. So really,
someone if they somewhere in Derry, if they just say the Union, this is hypothetical, were in charge and they named it what do you call it, Jamie Bryson Avenue, just to piss you off, But look, by the way, Craigavon Bridge in Derry, what do you think that was designed to do? That was just designed to piss everybody off. Craigavon Bridge.
Do you not think, Pat,
would ever got a vote in the Catholic areas of Derry?
But Pat, why would you not be in favour of changing the name of Craigavon Bridge? I would.
Absolutely. Would totally.
Why the hell haven't he done it?
He had absolutely zero. Again, maybe the Protestant population, but in other words, the majority, their voice, and a sizable majority had this rammed down their throats.
Yeah, I think those should be changed. You see, I remember the time when Nelson's pillar was blown up, and that was before the Troubles began, 1966, I think it was.
66, yeah.
And I remember I was working, and the guy who was the head of my department was an old duffer, from Roscommon or somewhere. Oh, he thought they were just bundles blowing up. And I I find myself thinking the same way. And then it was only after I pulled back and the Dubliners came out with a record, up went Nelson. that I realized. Yes, good idea.
Yes,
You see, I would be in favour. Some people say, well, that's part of our history. And there's that whole thing about the pulling down of statues of slave traders. I think I basically would say if the majority of people see these people as not being for the benefit of the nation, what the hell have they got a statue up to World War? Belfast, for example, is a nationalist city now. There's a majority nationalist, and yet we have Queen Victoria sitting in all her glory at the front of Belfast City Hall, and inside the place is loaded with busts and paintings of royalty and nobility and God knows what.
And British places, Yeah. Anyway, Jude, here, just changing the subject totally because I'm interested in this because I want to hear what you say.
Okay.
Apparently, Emma Little Pengelly and Michelle O'Neill traveled down last week to John Bruce's funeral. And here, I want to hear, what do you think they talked about for 3 years in the car or 2 hours?
Say, where did you get that dress? Was it on sale? No, sorry, I didn't mean that. Before I get crucified. No, I think a lot has been made of very little. Why the hell wouldn't they go down together? In fact, you might want to say, why did they have to travel by car? Why didn't they go down on the train?
Yeah.
Yeah? Well, allow them first class if they wanted. But I mean, if you're really serious about the planet and so on, they didn't have to go down by car.
They traveled together, so they were saving money. They didn't take 2 separate cars.
Well, at least that's, they're using some efficiency there. I think it's been over-egged, really. There was a big article in the Irish Times about it and saying, what are they? And it fitted into a whole thing where, what was that that rugby player that he had some
Andrew Trimble.
An Ulster man and an Irish man, but Ulster man was 9 counties. I got a wee bit impatient with that sort of. In a way, it's forcing everybody to get into the Alliance Party, and we'll all be nice to each other, and that's the end of it. It's not to do with being nice to people. It's being fair to people and not demonizing people and allowing people to accept the fact that democracy should rule. And yet, everybody a lot of the politicians in the South are saying, "Oh, geez, we can't have a border poll because what about the Unionists? They wouldn't like that." Come on.
Michelle O'Neill's father was what his name was, Doris, and not his name. I can't remember his first
Doris,
name. Yeah. He did time in jail, didn't he, for area activities? She had a couple of relatives shot. I think one of them died. Emma Little Pengelly, her father was what do you call him? He went off to, was it Paris to try and get guns? He was a gun runner or a attempted gun runner, an alleged gun runner from South Africa. So they've a similar background, except from different point of view. And apparently, when your father is in jail and all the rest, see, when you're growing up, there must be all sorts of issues, social issues, finance and so on. So bottom line is, they had more in common than me and you think.
Well, they have a lot. Yeah, that's true. They both have come from sort of deprived backgrounds. Their fathers were away and so on. I think it's good, but I wouldn't. I think we're putting too much emphasis on the window dressing. I have to see how they will perform and work together over the next 6 months politically. I don't think taking a common car up to the only time the common car ever had an effect up at Stormont was when the Assembly opened first and the Sinn Féiners came up in a West Belfast taxi. That was the only one.
And on that
note, that's what happened. Oh, you talking about class, eh? Okay, Pat, thank you.
All the best, dude. Good luck.
Yeah.